everybody. Welcome to a very special edition of Wrestling with the Future. I'm Angelo DISIPIO, your host, joined as I am every week. He's here smiling. Look at that man. Look at that grin. You're grinning, brother. You're grinning. You got a story to tell tonight. I know you do. Dan, the man SEBASTIANO, the happy haberdasher, the smartest man in the room. And Dan, we have a brand new guest tonight and a returning member of the family. Let me introduce our friend Javier OJST. Am I saying?
Yeah. OJST.
Javier, say your name.
Javier OJST.
There you go. I got close. And our friend from deep in the heart of the Sunshine State, Big Ben SCALA from Ocala. Benny, how you doing, brother?
Good. Good to be back.
It's nice to have you back, and I got news for you. You're going to get Pearl Harbor tonight. You don't know what's coming, but I got a surprise for you, you little shit.
Oh, all right.
Pearl Harbor. Uh-oh.
Yes. So let's introduce our guest of honor tonight. Javier OJST is a writer. He's a columnist, author. You are most associated, Javier, with Pro Wrestling Stories.
Yeah.
Now, for people who don't know, and I'm sure there are a great number of people who do, I know Benny's one of them because Benny writes for that circulation. Tell everybody a little bit about what Pro Wrestling Stories is.
Pro Wrestling. Well, thanks for having me on the show, Angelo, Dan. Pro Wrestling Stories has been going on for, I believe it's about 6 years. I had the opportunity to start writing for them last year. It was about Silver King, the Mexican wrestler who died in England last year of a heart attack. And I contacted them and said, you guys should write about this. And JP Zarka, which is who is the editor and owner, he said, basically I sent them a bunch of information. And he said, hey, you got all the information here. You got the passion for this. Looks like you know what's going on. Why don't you do it? I was scared to death. I'm like, well, I can do this. Let's try and do this. I didn't know what I was doing. I had written before. I used to work for my college for the sports program at St. Thomas University in Florida.
Sure.
That's nothing like writing an article with a story and nothing like that. Mm-hmm. Anyway, I got through it and I said, well, that's it. I wrote an article and great. One article became 2, then 3, and now 70 articles later, you guys have me on the show, and I'll keep on writing until
well, and in the interest of full disclosure, I troll a great number of these people don't know I do, but I do. That's how do you think, Dan, that I became the smartest guy in the room?
You met me. I thought it wasn't.
Go shut up, will you?
Osmosis.
Yeah, right. Well, I do. I troll Benny and I troll Javier. I read a lot of your stuff, a lot more than a lot of people know.
Right.
And
I have seen you commenting, Angelo. I have seen you commenting a couple of times.
Yeah, and I do, and I follow you and Benny for a couple of reasons. First of all, I like the no nonsense, no bullshit approach. Anybody who knows me, I'm a fun guy and I can have as much fun as the next guy. But when it comes to journalism, when it comes to getting a story out, I'm kind of a purist in that regard. Give me the facts, give me the information, tell me what I need to know, leave me wanting to ask questions. And that's what you and Benny do. You don't know you do that, Benny, but you do. Dan, in the interest of full disclosure, has written a number of articles that he doesn't know that I'm aware of, but I'm going to let Dan do something I've never asked him to do before and kind of give me a little bit of your background, Daniel, in journalism.
Okay. I actually had a very similar origin story to Javier. Years back, I don't know how many years ago it was now, there was what was originally a sports entertainment site covering wrestling, UFC, NoDQ.com, run by a man named Aaron Rift.
Sure.
I reached out to him I reached out to him about some items, and he very, like you said, Javier, very similar. Like, hey, you seem to know your stuff, and he gave me some login credentials, and next thing you know, I was writing there, and then I got picked up for some side projects, and it ended up being very much editorial. You know, here's my opinion on this, and here's my opinion on that, and we had, you know, at the time you had UFC, you had early TNA, WWE, and there was a lot of big stories because of just some of the things that were happening, some of the scandals and various things that came to fruition there. And you know, next thing you know, like you said, Javier, next thing you know, a couple dozen articles later, it's like, oh, this is actually, you know, what was supposed to be a one-off turned into a short stint, and then next thing you know, between my that transition with my love of the I've mentioned on the show many times the tapes. I used to watch all the old wrestling tapes. You know, go to the video store. So next thing you know, I'm researching history and I'm learning more about, you know, stuff that I was before my time. So I started writing on the history of wrestling and trying to get the scoops from the past. And one thing led to another, and here I am.
Well, and it didn't hurt that you knew Jeff the Ref Robinson either.
Yeah.
Oh, that man was an encyclopedia. You know that.
Yeah. I'm the one who dubbed him the Encyclopedia Britannica of pro wrestling.
Those early episodes, Angelo. I'm sorry. Those are great with you and Jeff. The first couple episodes of Wrestling with the Future. If someone
you remember
wants
that, Javier? We were flying by the seat of our pants, brother.
if someone wants to get a real good background of how things used to be, those first couple episodes are gold, absolute gold.
They really, really are. And I'm glad that you pointed that out, because the other thing, it was a learning experience. You know, Benny, you used the word a few moments ago, osmosis. And that's really what our journey was in the beginning. It was literally an osmosis, a reforming, if you will, of this podcast format into what it is now, where we have guests from all over the world, and we're able to pipe in live, and we're able to do phone calls and multiple. I think, how many guests did we have on Bruno's episode, Dan? It's like 7 or 8 of it.
I think with call-ins, 6 or 7 people.
Yeah. So now, Benny, tell me about your introduction to pro wrestling stories.
Well, so I really don't have a writing background per se. I have a degree in accounting. You know, most of my life I've been an accountant, but I always liked to write. And I mean, when my kids were little, I wrote stories for my kids. And about 3 years ago, I have a friend named Mike Mygott. He lives in Johnstown City, Pennsylvania. He was a good friend of Bruno's.
Yeah, I know Mike well.
You do know? Okay. So right before Bruno's birthday in 2017, I wrote a tribute to Bruno on Facebook for his birthday. Yeah. And Mike read it, and he said, you know, Benny, I'm taking Bruno to Rico's in Pittsburgh for his birthday. Would you mind if I read him your tribute? I said, would I mind? I mean, the guy's my hero. I'd be honored if you read that to him. And he did. And he said, well, don't be surprised if he calls you. And at the time, I was living in Minneapolis, Minnesota, working for a car dealership. About 6 o'clock at night, thank God I wasn't busy. And Mike calls me. He says, Benny, there's somebody on the phone who wants to talk to you. And you know, Bruno had that unmistakable voice.
Very distinct, Benny.
And the first words out of his mouth were, you know, Benny, how did you learn to write those beautiful words? Wow. And what I told him, I said, Bruno, when you write from the heart, it's easy.
He didn't say to you, well, you know, gosh darn it, Benny, you made me cry.
Doggone it. But, you know, and after that, you know, I met him in December. I had Christmas dinner with him, and it was the, you know, other than my kids being born, probably like one of the most significant nights of my entire life. And I thought, well, I got to write about this.
Sure, absolutely.
And I did the same thing. I mean, and I had met JP on Facebook, and I gave him the idea, and he said, yeah, go for it. And we went, you know, a lot of back and forth. He did some, you know, great editing on it, and there it is. And I wrote one more after that. But Javier, I have to catch up to you right now. I think it's like 65-2. So it's like the Washington Generals basketball.
But your couple of articles, each one of your articles is like worth 10 though.
But yeah, I have some more spare time coming up, and I intend to catch up to you.
Well, I intend to make you very busy, so hold on to your spare time.
Yeah, exactly.
So now, Javier, let's talk about what brings us, you and I, here tonight, because then we're going to open up, as Steve Austin would say, we're going to open up a can of whoop ass, because we got a lot to talk about. We're going to open up the can of worms, and they're going to go all over. Selena Vega, you brought something to my attention, and a rather lengthy article. Give everyone the gist of what we're talking about, and then go into detail for Benny's benefit, for Dan the Man's benefit, and myself, of course, our listening audience. What has transpired then, and what's going on now?
Yeah, the question with Selena Vega is, the question would be, is she going to be the catalyst of change? Finally, the catalyst of change for pro wrestling after all these years? Are they finally going to have some kind of unionization, some kind of organization where they'll be able to negotiate better deal, they can have 401ks, pension plans, health insurance. That's the big thing. Mm-hmm. Basically, Selena Vega with WWE was a rising star, and they were told that they cannot be on third tier accounts anymore. That's a Twitch, that's a Cameo. Those are basically they were making money off those. Sure. Selena, in her case, she was making more money off Twitch. It's reported by Dave Meltzer that she was making more money off Twitch than what she was making in WWE.
That's factual, Javier.
Yeah.
And I'm not one that likes to tout Dave Meltzer, and I'm not, and I will tell you that I independently verified that, separate and aside from Dave Meltzer, and she was in fact, making substantially, and I'll use that word, substantially more working at her Twitch.tv gig than WWE. Here's the problem that I have, and I want to throw this to everybody. Maybe we can do kind of a round robin, Dan. Yeah. And we'll start with Javier and you, and then Benny can chime in. But here's the open-ended question. Given the fact that these pro wrestlers are contracted employees and not employees per se, they're subcontractors. They're, what do they call them, Dan? They're 1099
independent contractors.
Yeah, they're 1099 employees, right?
Yeah, they're all classified as independent.
I have to ask my accountant, Mr. Scala. Benny, 1099?
Yeah, they're contracted employees, like Dan said. They're not truly employees.
Okay. Given that fact, and I think we all agree on that, how the hell does anybody have the right to tell a subcontracted employee, second party by nature, who they can or cannot work for or make money from, especially when the amount of money you're paying them is below standard? So Javier, take that one.
And I'd like
around the loop.
I'd like to add, Selena Vega was doing that not on WWE time. It's her time. She had that.
And that's exactly the point.
That's the thing. But the question, the WWE falls, their argument is, okay, you're making money off Zelina Vega, off your name, off the name that we created. That's the thing. The question would be, was her account under her name or Zelina Vega? Even if it's under her birth name, people are there for Zelina Vega. They don't care what she can put Randy Macho Man Savage underneath her, but people are there for Zelina Vega, and Zelina Vega, WWE gave the platform, provided a platform for her to become a star, and she became a star because she's talented, but WWE provided the platm, but it was on her free time,
Let me ask you, and you know what? Maybe let me ask Benny this question. Benny, if you see Hulk Hogan on the street, is he Hulk Hogan or is he Terry Bollea?
He's Hulk to me.
Okay. Now, if he goes home on his computer, sets up a Twitch.tv account under the name Terry Bollea, Is he Terry Bollea or is he Hulk Hogan?
Yes, at that point, he's Terry, right?
Well,
or
can't hide. Here's the problem, though. We
know
know his name, but that's not the issue. It's what people see. People see Zelina Vega.
Right.
People see Hulk Hogan.
They could see Terry Bollea, but they're still going to think Hulk Hogan.
That's my point, Ben. Right. Benny, that's exactly my point. Dan, chime in on this one, because I know you're chomping at the bit.
It's actually funny you mentioned Hulk Hogan, because some of the precedent that WWE is using stemmed from Hulk Hogan's lawsuit with Gawker, where he set the legal precedent that I'm talking about Hulk Hogan on this tape, not talking about Terry Bollea. That's a character I play, so you can't hold me legally responsible for things that Hulk Hogan says and does in character, or if I'm playing Hulk Hogan.
And he got away with it, Dan.
Well, and that's kind of Javier's point, is regardless of what name you're using, the WWE's argument is the fame that you've garnished is from us. So therefore, any cashing in on that fame should be through our pockets.
Well, here's the thing, and Javier, correct me if you think I'm wrong, and I encourage everybody, if you think I'm off base with this, shut me down.
Oh no.
Here's my contention. My contention will be, has been, and will remain that it was singularly the union subject. That was the subject matter that got Zelina Vega in hot water. That was the linchpin right there. I don't think it had anything to do really with her money. I really, really don't. They are absolutely, adamantly against any form of unionization, because that means that they can no longer control those people. Now they have to answer to other people. And Vince McMahon and Paul Levesque and Stephanie McMahon Levesque are not accustomed to answering to anyone.
Amen.
Shut me down if you think I'm wrong.
I believe that what happened in the timeline, the way things happened, is when she posted, I support unionization, she already knew that she was going to be fired. She hadn't been fired yet, but she had been told that she was going to be fired. And reports say that Vince McMahon didn't want to speak with her before she left. That's what I read also.
That doesn't surprise me, Javier. Yeah. It doesn't surprise me a bit. And you know what? And good for her. And I'm going to tell her, if she's watching this, and if anybody knows her, tell her to watch this. Ms. Vega, if you're out there, I'm telling you, kudos, sister. Yeah. Good for you.
Takes a lot of courage.
You took one final parting shot at them, and good for you.
Yeah.
Jesse Ventura.
Yep.
Jesse Ventura made a fortune for that company. He made a mint for that company, working with and against Hogan, Macho Man, Adrian Adonis, you name it. All of the players made a fortune for them. And they cut him off like yesterday's bad news.
Yep.
When he said union.
He's one of the few wrestlers who have had some success, well, a lot of success against Vince McMahon. He was $800,000.
4 lawsuits against him, Javier.
Yeah.
Including, let me remind everybody, including back royalties, residuals from tapes that had his name and likeness on it. Yeah. Because he was Jesse Ventura before the WWF.
That's what he told him, yeah.
That's what people don't remember. Well, how did Jesse win? Because he was Jesse before WWF.
Yep.
So where do we stand? Where's the story at this point, up to this date in time?
Right now, it's kind of cooled off, which worries me. But what I understand is the SAG-AFTRA people and what's her name, Gabriela Carteris. Yeah, she mentioned that they were going to be contacting people individually, and I believe that's what's going on. They're trying to they're trying to make it work, along with Andrew Yang. Yeah, right. He wants to get involved. Yep.
Yeah, I was actually just about to say that. Andrew Yang's taken a personalized interest, calling out the WWE specifically for their practices. And with Joe Biden having won the election, he's most likely going to be involved in the administration. So now you're going to have someone active with the power of the government behind them, specifically going after the WWE, which was a point Jesse Ventura always made when he talked about the contracts. Is, you know, you tell me where I have to work, who I can work for, what I can do, when I can do it, but you don't give me anything as far as insurance or anything like that because I'm independent. How am I independent if I can't do anything without the say-so of one person? That'd be like hiring a plumber and telling them you can only come to my house when I tell you, and I'll sue you if I see you
solution for that, Dan. I have a very simple solution for that. Tell me if I'm wrong. Simple solution. Hire them as full-time employees.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's that simple. Just hire them as an employee.
I mean, the WWF, WWE, they've been accused of misclassifying employees
for decades.
To free them of obligations that they would otherwise have to offer. You know,
this is not new, and I want
no, definitely not.
No.
You know, they say history repeats itself. Well, this is a story that's repeated itself, not just with Ms. Vega and Mr. Ventura. Let's remind people that Mr. Sammartino went through a little a roundabout with them back in the early days when Vince Jr. was starting to flex his, executive muscles, so to speak, at the end of his father's tenure. That's what started the bad blood between Vince and Jr. I mean, between Vince Jr. and Bruno. That's where it all stemmed from. You know, you're not going to tell a guy that's been, 10-year, 11-year world champion and made, a Fort Knox in money for you that he's wrong. Are you kidding me?
Right.
How do you do that with a guy that made your company what it is?
He carried
that company. You on the map.
If you look at how things are distributed, I read that right now, if WWE, the talent gets 8% of the gross, 8%. Yeah. If you look at other pro leagues, it's about 60-40, even 50-50 if you look at football. For pro wrestling, for WWE, it's 8% for the talent.
That's absolutely disgraceful.
8% gross.
Yep.
Benny, you're a money guy. Let me throw some numbers at you. These are real numbers, by the way, Benny. Real numbers. Downside guarantee, low-end downside guarantee right now is $75,000. That's if you sit home and do absolutely nothing for a year. You're going to get 75 grand. If you've got merch that's selling, you're going to get, as Javier said, 8% of the merch. Television, I'm sorry, not television. T-shirts, DVDs.
Yeah, all the gimmicks,
championship belts, if you happen to be a belt holder, whatever the case may be, you're going to get a piece of that as well. If you're the money guy and you have one of these people as your client, are you going to tell them to stay home? Are you going to tell them to go to work? Or are you going to tell them to keep their mouth shut and keep cashing the checks?
Well, I mean, if they're getting just the 75 grand for doing nothing, that's one thing. But I mean, if I'm their manager, I want them maxing out their merch and everything else too, though.
Yeah, well, and that's a slippery slope, though. And here's the question, though, Benny: how do you navigate that from a financial standpoint?
Yeah, I mean, the problem is that your merch really is in somebody else's hands. It's not really in your hands.
That's the point, Benny. Right. You just nailed it, Benny. You just nailed it. That's what people don't understand, Dan the Man. Yep. That's what they don't get. They have no control over. They have to take their word for it. Well, when somebody shows you that ledger sheet and said, this is how much merch you sold. Well, how do I know? Who verified that?
Yeah.
Who from my camp?
That's a good point.
Verified the veracity of that.
Well, you also see that I think most high profile was with the merchandise concerning Jordan Miles, but where you have wrestlers that come out publicly and say they had no control over what their merch looked like, how it was distributed, or in cases like Miro back when he was Rusev, who became one of the #1 merch sellers in the company, and they specifically changed his gimmick because they didn't want to give him that money. They didn't want to give him that spot. So, we're gonna basically sacrifice ourselves just to screw you on the merch royalties. Just to
it happened to another guy too, Dan. Happened to another guy too, a guy that you're not real fond of, but a guy who nonetheless stood up for himself and got paid. He got his payday. A guy named Ryback.
Yeah.
Ryback was the same way. He fought for his merch. He fought for his money. He fought for his royalties and residuals, and he got it. Here's the thing. If you think about what Ryback did, what Bruno did, what Jesse Ventura did, think about what they all did. They fought back. They fought legally. They all fought back legally because they had the balls to do so.
Yeah.
The problem is if you just sit back like a good puppy and say, oh, thank you, Mr. McMahon. Oh, thank you for my $800 this week. $800? Some of these people are wiping their ass with $800. Are you kidding me?
Right.
On a recent show, Tony Atlas, talking about this subject, he mentioned that he received $140 for the year in residuals. $140 for the whole year.
Yep.
I heard him say that on Boston Wrestling.
Exactly. Yeah.
Is that the show you're talking about?
Yeah.
Yeah, Boston Wrestling.
Yeah, we did a
crazy. It's crazy.
We had one of the last segments I did before my new schedule kicked in was an interview with Duke the Dumpster Drosy, and he was telling us the story that they offered them a cash per diem, $20 a week or $20 a show. I mean. In lieu of their paycheck, like take the per diem. And he said these guys would take the cash because they could never guarantee their paychecks would be right or on time or anything.
Think about that.
So, I mean, here's a guy at the time he was in a feud with, he was in a feud with Triple H, making, number 30 in the Rumble, somewhat being pushed on television, $20 a day.
Yeah, I remember that show.
And he's not lying. Duke is on our show talking to Dan, and that's exactly what he said. $20 a day per diem.
Yeah, they have to pay. They have to pay hotel, travel. You can get 75 grand sounds nice, but you're paying hotel, you're paying your car rental, you're paying maybe if you got to fly.
Insurance too, right?
You're paying your food.
Yeah, your own health insurance.
It's funny, Dan, and it's a very fresh in our memory. Javier, Benny, we just had the living legend Larry Zbyszko on.
Yeah.
And Larry, how about it, Benny? I mean, how about it, Dan? Larry talked about if we didn't sell tickets, we didn't eat. And that's exactly what he said.
Yep.
He said if we didn't sell tickets, we didn't eat. Those guys were working for, Dan the man, tell me if I'm bullshitting. They were working for $25, for $50. They did double shots on Saturday and double shots on Sunday.
Five or six of them in a rental car, 5 or 6 of them in a shady motel, just because that was the only way they could afford to have any money at the end of the week.
Eating bologna sandwiches
on the floor.
Yep.
The bologna blowout.
Yeah, bologna and cheese sandwiches. Yeah, the bologna blowout. Yeah. Real deal, people. That's real stuff.
The sad thing is that there's no accountability. Nobody, like you said, nobody is holding them accountable, and you have to be almost a Bruno or a Jesse to hold them accountable.
You opened up the Pandora's box that I referred to earlier in the show when I said the can is going to open and them worms are just going to go out all over the place. That's the problem, Benny, right there. No one is being held to account. Nobody's feet are being held to the fire. The only people that had the balls to do that to Vince and company were Jesse, Ryback,
and Bruno,
and to some extent, Ultimate Warrior, rest in peace. But let's be honest, the Warrior just held him up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He may as well.
You do have the lawsuit with the 30 wrestlers with the concussions.
Oh, the concussion
right.
thing.
Some are still alive, some are not, but that's still there.
Actually, I have a friend of mine that was involved in that lawsuit, Vito LaGrasso.
Okay.
And we talked about Vito and I talked about that. The problem is those guys, they lost going into that. And here's why they lost going into it. Here's what happened. Before, understand, they're professional wrestlers. Before any of them went to WWF or WWE, every one of them, Javier, every one of them worked for another company.
Mm-hmm.
How do you prove? How do you prove that your concussion came about on their watch? In that respect, I have to favor the company, right? Because it's a compelling argument.
It's hard to prove, yeah.
Yeah. And Vito, and I believe him, there was an unsafe working environment.
I believe, I remember that show. I believe Vito said that the WWEF, they had the best rings. They had the safest rings. I believe he said that, yeah.
Yeah. Now think about, companies like ECW that were not exactly safe.
Yeah.
How about some other independent organizations like the AWA that wasn't really known for its safety factors?
Mm.
You have to understand something. These guys traveled all over the country, largely in cars. Only the big names, Benny, got to fly.
Right.
Yeah.
Yep.
It's still. I believe it's still that way.
Still today, yeah.
Yeah.
If you're making money for Vince, you get to fly in WWE 1 or whatever they call it.
Yeah, that was actually. Oh, I'm sorry, Javier. Go ahead.
No, I was just going to comment. According to Rockin' Robin, she had zero experience of traveling, and she just got in the mail her plane tickets and the dates, and she had to match those up. She's a teenager; she had no idea.
Yeah.
And the same happens with the stars today. The same thing. They just send you stuff in the mail where you got to be, what days, and you figure it out. We're talking about the biggest company, pro wrestling company. Sports entertainment company in the world, and they still do things like that.
I'm glad you clarified yourself there because I was going to fight you on that.
Yeah, I wanted to really clarify myself there.
Dan the Man will tell you, and Benny will tell you, I got a real problem with that term wrestling when it comes out of the WWE camp.
It stopped being wrestling a long time ago, unfortunately.
Yeah, well, I mean, Benny, you and I are around the same age bracket. We're only a couple of years apart.
Right.
And you and I grew up watching a product that was pro wrestling.
Yep.
Okay? No question about it. It was pro wrestling. What I see today doesn't even resemble the same sport. No.
It's almost like they're ashamed of their past or something. I don't know.
I could call our wrestling, Benny and I's wrestling, I can call it a sport. I can't call this any facsimile of a sport.
It's coordinated spots is what it is.
Yeah, well, it's a spots fest. We call them monkey spots, high spots, whatever you want to call them.
Or like you say, Angelo, getting their shit in, right?
Yeah, I love that. I love that. Benny.
You think about it, Angelo, how many guests have we had on, Larry Zbyszko and all these guys, that the first thing they say when they talk about the new product is how, the second the bell rings, those guys are 150 miles an hour, flips, high spots, bam, bam, bam.
They've all said it.
Yeah, every one of them has the same exact complaint. It goes to what Javier just said a minute ago, it is like a part of them is ashamed of the past, and not just the wrestling. In the WWE, you can't use the word belt. You can't call it a strap. You can't say title shot.
Vince McMahon is ashamed that his father was a wrestling promoter. Vince McMahon doesn't call himself a wrestling promoter. He's a television producer.
Yeah.
That's the difference. He's not a wrestling guy.
They want to be everything and everything. Yeah,
he is a marketing guy. Let's be real clear about it. He's a marketing guy. All right.
They want to do everything and they want to be everything and anything except wrestling. They want to be a movie. They want to be a TV show. They want to be like a music video. Anything that does not resemble wrestling.
Here's what bothers me. Here's what bothers me. It's human nature, you guys. And I want you to chime in, and we'll start with Benny. Here's what bothers me about this. Human nature is to follow the leader. If the leader is doing it, they must be doing something right, because they're the biggest and they're the best. Okay? I could drive a truck through the holes in that argument. Okay?
Right.
I really could. Because you're the biggest and because you're the best doesn't mean you're doing it right. Here's my problem. AEW, and I've said it on this show before, and Dan will attest to it. I've said it many times. AEW, I held out great hope and promise that they were finally going to do wrestling. And then NWA Power came along, and I said, finally an homage to the old school.
Right.
Yep.
And they got side squashed. Then Ring of Honor. Then New Japan. Well, New Japan was never we'll talk about them later. But Ring of Honor, they had some potential. But then they got, they felt the financial crush, and they ate the bullet pretty much. They're hanging on by a thread. Here's the issue I have, though, and Benny started off the argument. Because the WWE is so big and generally regarded as the best, why? Explain to me, why on earth do we listen to our inner human nature and follow the leader? Where is the independent thought in wrestling now, Benny?
I think that, like, the older guys like us, we still have that. I think what the WWE is trying to do is change the perception of what wrestling is. And, a lot of the younger people, they don't know anything but the WWE, and they're drinking the Kool-Aid. You never hear them say anything about, you never hear Ivan Koloff or Edouard Carpentier or Dominic DeNucci. You never hear those names mentioned. And they're a vital part of the past. It's almost
like on our show, we did a 2-hour interview with Dominic.
Right. Yeah. But I mean, you'll never hear them on WWE. You'll never hear that out of Michael Cole's mouth.
And you know why? Because they're embarrassed of their
history. They are embarrassed. What a pity.
Yeah. They're embarrassed of the legacy they created.
And what they don't understand is, if it wasn't for a Dominic DeNucci and a Bruno and a Edouard Carpentier, there wouldn't be a WWE.
And therein, Vince McMahon and Joe Biden have a lot in common. Because President Joe Biden and President Vince McMahon are both senile in the head, whose best days have passed them by, who don't understand what's happening in the moment, and aren't willing to change. And that's the problem. They're not willing to change. That's been Vince's albatross for decades. He can't change who he is.
Right.
And he'll never, and until he dies, and Lord, I hope he lives to be 100. I mean that. But until he dies, you will not see a single change in that company. Yeah. If you leave it to Paul Levesque and Stephanie, you may have a chance, because I think she will listen to him. Okay.
It reminds me of Al Davis and the Raiders. I'm a Raiders fan, and for decades the Raiders, they didn't have a general manager. They were doing things like back in the 70s and mid 80s. They did not change. They kept on throwing the deep ball. I mean, Al Davis had just a grip on that team. He was a general manager. He was the owner. He was a scout. He was calling plays from the skybox.
Yeah. Good, Dan.
Yeah, no, that's a great example, and you're seeing that now with the Dallas Cowboys, where the more Jerry Jones tightens his grip, the less long-term success the team's had.
Right.
But I want to go back to Benny's point for a second. Some of the great names from the past that are vital to the success the WWE has. I mean, look at how often, you obviously anytime something like recently with Pat Patterson, for example, when someone passes, there's the montage. And that's one thing.
And thank you for saying that. I'm going to stop you right there. Oh my God. I wanted to do that at the outset of the show. Pay our respects to the family of the late Pat Patterson. It's strange to even say that. Pat Patterson, a man regarded as the greatest Finnish guy in pro wrestling, passed away yesterday. And I think at the age of near 80.
70.
I think he was 79.
79.
I was going to say it was almost 80. Yeah, 79. But here's a guy. Another guy. Here you go.
This is 90% of people have no idea. They don't have no idea who he is. Of the young kids,
that's exactly where I'm going with this. Here's a guy who changed the face. I don't think about this now. He changed the face of wrestling. The first openly gay pro wrestler to hold a championship.
First I see.
And everybody knew it. Yeah. All the boys knew it. They all knew he was gay. Every one of them knew he was a gay man. But he's a gay man who could kick your ass, who could sell tickets, who could win championships. And most importantly, he's a gay man. He was a gay wrestler, put it that way, who could bring people into the building by simply talking them in. Yeah. He had that ability. He had the gift of the promo.
Yeah, he had four MSG with a Backlund, right?
I was just gonna say that. Yeah,
no one's done that, right? I mean, not 4, maybe 3, but not 4. Yeah,
right. Exactly. It's important to mention that he was a gay guy, because at a time in wrestling when gay men didn't come out, he came out. In a macho sport, by the way. Okay?
Yeah,
so
and
kudos to Pat Patterson for being brave, and for taking it on the chin when he had to. But I got news for you. Say what you want about him, and the people have made Pat Patterson jokes for decades. I'm going to tell you something. That man could wrestle. He could fight. He was convincing doing it, and he was a hell of a finish guy.
I was about to say
the WWE would not have been the company that it was had he not been by Vince McMahon's side, hanging out at the pool, writing storylines.
I think it's important too, Angelo, and I didn't mean to cut you off. I thought you were finished. That
I'm never finished, Dan. You know that.
It's not just the skill; it's also the mind. For the years he worked as an agent, some of the biggest moments in wrestling, WrestleMania and other events, he was credited with booking. He was a finish man, but he also came up with the idea of the Royal Rumble. He talked Vince McMahon. He's one of the ones who talked Vince McMahon out of calling WrestleMania the Colossal Tussle, which it's a horrible name.
Let's
but I mean,
let me stop you there for a second. Hold on. The Colossal Tussle, and I've heard that before, and that was legit, by the way, in case you guys never heard it.
Yeah.
WrestleMania was this close to being called the Colossal Tussle.
Yep.
Yeah.
Pat Patterson is the one who came up. It was actually Pat Patterson, and you're going to laugh when I tell you, it was Howard Finkel and Pat Patterson that came up with WrestleMania.
Yep.
And Pat Patterson singularly came up with the name the Royal Rumble.
Mm-hmm.
That was his baby from start to finish.
I think every book you read about stars that were in that era, they'll claim that they came up with that WrestleMania name. It's ridiculous.
Straight shoot, brother.
Dr. D says it was his idea, and it goes on and on.
Dan will tell you, I have a lot of people on this show. I go back a long time with a lot of people. We've had a lot of people on the show. J.J. Dillon, Davey O'Hannon. We've had Eddie Mansfield, Dominic DiNucci, Larry Zabisco, Sal Carenti, our buddy Sal, Denny
Casey.
You know, Tony Villano, our buddy Tony, Lanny Poffo, Seth Turner, just recently from the International Pro Wrestling Hall of Fame. We've had a lot of people on this show who have a deep, steeped history in pro wrestling. And we categorize and archive those shows because nobody else is preserving the history except us. We're the only ones doing that.
Right.
Do you realize that?
Yeah.
We're the only podcast that's doing that. It just blows my fucking mind. Pardon my French, guys. It blows my mind that we're the only ones. I'm glad we are, by the way, because I got surprised at the end of the show that Benny and Dan the Man don't know about.
Well, you could have been podcast number 5,000 to talk about Raw and SmackDown every week. You could have done that, right?
Javier, yeah. Oh, number 5,000 or number 500,000? Because by the way, just this number is gonna blow your mind. Just in the wrestling genre,
wow,
there are over 400,000 podcasts worldwide. I'm not even shitting you. Jesus. I kid you not. Kid you not. Now, another thing that brings us together here, gentlemen. Oh, Dan, I'm sorry. You were and when I interrupted you about Pat, you were saying something.
Yeah, no, that's fine. You interrupt me so rarely, it caught me off guard.
You're being sarcastic now, young.
No, the point I was making with Pat Patterson's history is you think about Hulk Hogan. When Hulk Hogan won the title for the first time, it was within 20 years of Buddy Rogers of his retirement. And at no point growing up in the 80s did I ever hear them mention Buddy Rogers on TV. I knew about him from the tapes. Fans today, fans in the 90s didn't hear about Bruno. Fans today barely hear about Hogan and Savage and all. Once a new generation is created by McMahon, the old one disappears. Exactly. I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, Javier, in your experience, and Benny, same thing. You're talking Pat Patterson's one of the greatest competitors in the history of the business, and 90% of wrestling fans know him from his corporate stooge gimmick, and that's it. They even during that time when he was on TV every week, they almost never acknowledged his wrestling past.
From like the mid 80s onward, WWF is only forward thinking. They forgot about the past. Just forward. Everything new is better.
Well, think about it, Javier. What happened during that time? I'll tell you exactly what happened.
Vince took over.
Vince McMahon Sr. died. Yeah. Vince McMahon Jr. took over.
Yeah, 83.
And all bets were off, and it was no longer wrestling. He declared almost immediately. Remember when he came on television with that ugly plaid jacket? I'll never forget. I'll see it as clear as day. That plaid jacket that said, "We're no longer going to refer to the good guys and the bad guys." Remember that?
Yeah. Well, I've seen it.
There are no more
proceeded to put everybody out of business.
He basically exposed the business. He shit on the business his father created. In so doing, he smartened everybody up. Another, talk about break kayfabe.
Yeah.
He took a giant shit on kayfabe.
People throw it all on Eddie Mansfield that you've had on the show 3 times. It wasn't him. He didn't, and we can go on all night for that.
I'm real quick to point that out too, because I'll defend Eddie up and down, brother. Yeah. Dan will tell you, I will defend Eddie Mansfield all day long on that one.
Yeah.
When
Vince started getting when he took control of the whole car, that's when things changed forever.
And John Stossel's lucky he only got his ear boxed. They were going to beat the fuck out of him. He don't know how close he came to being a paraplegic. Yeah. So we have 3 guys here that are writers. let's talk. At the beginning of the show, I said we're going to go inside the stories. Let's go inside the story here. Another story that you did, Javier, that I followed, and I wanted to talk about it. A lot of people, kind of talk about history glossing over. Back in the day, believe his name was Billy Wolf.
Billy Wolf. Yeah,
Billy Wolf was a promoter for women's wrestling back in the day, and I believe it was his adopted daughter. Was it a step?
Yes.
Right? Am I right about that one?
It was a young girl. She was underage, and he adopted her. We don't know if Billy Wolf and Mildred Burke, they were a couple.
Right, they were married. Yeah,
but we don't know if Mildred Burke approved of that relationship, of that adoption. But she was adopted.
Yeah. So so the question I have is
Janet Boyer Wolf.
That's it.
Yeah. And the allegation has been, and this is why we're going to go on the inside here. The allegations over the years have been everything from it was a pre-planned hit, to use that term, an inside screw job, to use another term, a way of, quote, taking her out, unquote, doing it legally, because if you die in the ring, you die in the ring,
That's like if you in hockey, if you get hit, but it's not a illegal hit, or football, it happens, right?
The problem here is something you pointed out earlier. She lied about her age. She wasn't 18. I believe she was 16 or 17.
Yeah, she was underage. So that's why he had to take her under his wing in order for her to be a wrestler. That's how I understood it. Yeah.
Yeah, and so I know that he put her in the ring well under the age of 18. I think she was 16 or 17.
Yeah, she was underage.
I wanted to say 16 for whatever reason, because that's like sticking with me. So who is to blame then? Is it he to blame for putting her in the ring? Are the conspirators to blame for essentially killing this kid? What's the story, Benny?
And it's funny because I read Javier's story about 2 hours ago. That same story.
Oh, no shit.
And that's weird. And I think I had read something similar in Wrestling Review many, many years ago about her as well. And I think back then they kayfabed it that she got kicked in the stomach and she had eaten a big meal, and I guess her stomach exploded. And but if you're a minor, you really can't be held accountable. I mean, you're not really legally capable of making your own decisions yet. That was her third match, I believe.
It was third match.
From what I read, she wasn't ready to be in the ring.
Oh, not even close, Benny. Not even close. Yeah. Dan, what do you know about that?
Actually, very, very little. It's one of those stories that kind of gets a passing glance in the grand scheme of history, and I'll confess it's one of those that I never really followed up on. I'm aware of the basics of it, but I never really deep dived into the specifics of the history of it, so I'm not really one to speak on it.
That's one of the reasons why I wanted to cover it. I wanted to cover it, and I got the green light, and I said, well, this is something I don't think too many people know about, and to me it was it's a sad story, but one of those stories that needs to be told.
I'll tell you what, Javier, I'll tell you what, along those lines, I have information, first-hand information, on the death of the Quick Draw Rick McGraw.
Oh, okay.
A lot of people don't know this, but he died on television in a match with Roddy Piper.
Very young. Okay?
Yeah. He was dead before he left the ring.
Wow.
They carried him out like he was injured, but he was already dead. What people don't know is that he did not die from a heart attack, as was reported, from steroids. Yes, it's true. He was taking steroids.
Right.
He dies from a broken neck in the ring. That's what killed him. It severed his spinal cord. And that's what, and that incident there.
Yeah, that's the
from
official.
that moment forward, you could see a visible and psychological change in Roddy Piper. Roddy Piper was not the same from that moment forward.
How could you be? Yeah.
It really screwed him up. It really, really did. And in later years, you could really see Roddy was struggling with it. If you ever wanted to see that played out in real time, watch Legends House with Pat Patterson and Roddy Piper and Tony Atlas and Jimmy Hart and Hillbilly Jim and
Mean Gene and
Hacksaw. Yeah, Hacksaw Duggan. Watch that. And Howard Finkel. Watch that whole series. And watch Roddy Piper. He's gone. He's not there. He wasn't the same since. And I believe that, and I will stand by that. And I'll make that argument with anybody who wants to make the argument.
Yeah, Rick McGraw, if you I'm sorry, just the official story is like you say, well, it's not, it's the heart steroids and heart attack. And I thought that was super strange. Such a young guy. Always thought that was strange. I thought there's got to be something off there. Yeah.
Yeah. It didn't make sense when it happened. Go ahead, Dan.
No, Javier just took the words out of my mouth. When the official narrative? No, you're fine. When the official narrative is a young, fit guy who, honestly, even people who say steroids will acknowledge he hadn't been taking them for long. Gets into a training regimen with steroids and then drops dead of a heart attack. When you've got, I hate to say it, but there's guys we've had on the show that'll tell us they took steroids for 25, 30 years, and here they are 70 and fine. There's more to it than that, especially the nature of for lack of a better term, the manner in which he collapsed in the ring.
Oh, Dan,
doesn't sound like a medical emergency. It sounds like something broke.
Dan, we had Magnum TA on the show.
Oh, yes.
He told us he was eating steroids like candy.
Yeah.
Remember, he told us that they had a grocery bag overflowing with, drugs and needles and all kinds of stuff. He was looking like a gorilla. And he's fine.
Yeah.
Still around, Thank God he's still around. That car accident almost killed him. But the steroids never did.
Right.
Yeah.
That's my point.
You talk, Angelo, about stories and Javier, you mentioned wanting to cover stories that a lot of people don't know about. I do want to commend you while it's fresh in my mind. A couple months ago, I think it was September, October, you wrote an article on Ashley Massaro that I thought was really, really well done and went into the betrayal of the company and how they kind of turned a blind eye to her story. And I think the narrative you had was something that I don't think it's talked about enough. I just wanted to commend you on. I thought that was a phenomenal article.
Well, Dan, thank you for bringing that up because that was on the list too.
Oh, okay, sorry, I didn't mean to jump.
No, I'm glad you did because I'm gonna let Benny jump in that one. Ashley Massaro committed suicide. A lot of people say that she was seriously and severely depressed over losing her position and suffering some injuries in her career, not looking the way she once looked, and she's a beautiful woman. Who's to blame for that, Benny? Does the company, do they have to step up and take some responsibility for that, or once she leaves, is she on her own?
Well, I mean, I think it goes back to what we were saying earlier about, contracted employee. Like, why are these people contracted employees? They're pretty much, they can't work for anybody else. So why aren't they employees? And every good employer has an EA, the employee assistance program, where someplace where you can go where you are, if you are hurting on the inside, and you can do that in confidence.
No, that's actually a great point, because one of the key, I hate to say parts, but the parts that led to the problems Ashley had is she claimed she was sexually assaulted by a service member during one of the tribute to the troops shows overseas, and the company either told her, depending on the version of the story, either told her to drop it or never really did anything with it. And if they had something as basic as an employee advocate group that you get, you're a cashier at a grocery store and you get an employee advocate, you know, she had no course of action once the people running her contract decided that they weren't going to do anything about it.
Yeah, she was basically told to let it go.
That was one of the hardest articles I've written out of all my articles. I've chosen a lot of sad topics, but the Ashley Mazzara one was a tough one because I didn't know how much detail I should write about that incident. Because
Javier, I'm going to stop you right there because you just opened up a line of questioning, and I want you to continue that answer, but incorporate this into it. You said it was personally a hard article for you to write, and you struggled personally with how much to write, how much to put in. Is there ever a choice in editorial content? Do you ever have really a choice to tell the whole truth and nothing but the truth, or do you pick and choose the truth?
We're the guidelines we're given, at least I'm given, is tell as much as what's needed to tell the story, as much as needed. Don't embellish, don't add things, make sure there's sources, tell whatever's needed to for the story to be right. And for the Mazzara one, I was actually trying to cut myself a little short on what happened over in Kuwait. Yeah. My thinking was, what if a family member stumbles upon this article and they're like, why are they talking about my mom like this? Why? But then I was told, listen, man, I know it's tough, but this is already public information. It's been out there for years. You're just writing what's already been out there for years. So
Javier, you opened up another Pandora's box here, brother. Dan will tell you, and I have had this conversation with Dan and with other guests on the show, and I feel extremely passionate about this subject matter. Is Ashley Massaro a person or a product?
I mean, it goes back to the question about Selena Vega, right?
Question to answer, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's a hard question to answer.
Well, she was treated basically like a product by WWE, seems like, not a person.
That's my point.
And
thank you very much. You just nailed it. Because I want to ask you another question.
Go ahead.
I'm not done with you. I'm not done with you yet. The company, it's clear, treats their superstars, for lack of a better word, their 1099 contracted employees, they treat them like merchandise, like products. Okay, that's clear. That's without dispute, without argument. I don't think there's anybody here that would argue that point. But if you listen to people like Cowboy Scott Casey and Johnny Mantell and people like J.J. Dillon and Jimmy Valiant and Bill Dundee and any number of old timers we've had, they all had a life too. Okay? At what point do you cease to become a product and live your life as a person? Benny, take that one.
You know, I think, and a lot of the guys you mentioned, though, were, you know, in their heyday was the territory days where, you know, they could work for a territory for 6 months, give their 2 weeks notice, and then go somewhere else and work. And they kept doing that, you know, for years and years and years.
Benny, let me stop you right there for a minute. To Javier's point earlier, working a gig on Twitch TV is tantamount to the same thing. It's the new territory. Let's just call it what it is. It's the new territory. Social media is the new territory system.
You're right.
Because that's how these people are getting seen. Am I lying? Am I wrong?
No.
That's how they're being seen. So, and I understand what you're saying, Benny, and you're absolutely right. Absolutely right. But again, to Javier's point, do they not have a right to make, to earn some money, to make a living, to be a person? So where does the commodity cease and the person breathe again?
If you look at what it is to be an employee as opposed to a contractor, they on their contract it says contractor, and then it mentions independent contractor. Basically, an employee will have more control over how you do your work. If the wrestlers don't choose how they don't choose their outfits. WWE has a lot of control over them.
Yeah,
like employees, not independent contractors. So that's WWE's argument is very loose, and I really do think things are going to change somehow if things are going to.
Here's what, and I really want like Dan and Benny to kind of chime in on this one, because Javier, you set up this question splendidly. I'm proud of you, son. I'm proud of you. Here's the question I have. Dan the Man.
Yes, sir.
And Big Ben, piano wire SCALA. I love that too. The question is this, and it's a fairly straightforward one. Given the fact that they are independent contractors, they are treated as such, and we know that, and that's never been in dispute. How is it? Explain to me how, for all of these years, more people haven't won suits against them. They keep winning. They got this legal team that finds these loopholes, and they just drive a train through it. Like, is it so simple? Is their contract so simple that it's bulletproof? Or is it so bulletproof that it's simple?
It's actually a combination of both. And the biggest thing is that it's a contract. I mean, you saw that when the story broke that the WWE was cracking down on third parties. AJ Styles, Xavier Woods, anybody who had a prominent third party identity, they were pulled in basically. Here's your new contract, sign it or you're fired. You sign the contract under your own recognizance, and there's, I mean, let's be honest, I'm sure a WWE active contract is probably half as thick as a phone book with all the technical loopholes that are in there.
Dan, let me ask you a question. And I've heard that, and I've heard it from several sources. My question would be, if given the choice between signing the contract or being fired, fire my ass, okay?
Yeah.
But the right result, the right scenario would be, okay, Mr. McMahon, I will cease and desist all third-party activity, but make it up to me in my contract.
See, and that's the thing is it's something Javier touched on, is the power struggle is slowly shifting. For 18 of the last 21 years, the WWE was the only national program in the United States. Now you've got, and I mean prominent, TNA was around, but their market share was statistically insignificant, but Nicholson, they were the only major player. Now you've got, AEW, you've got, like you said, with NWA and their big touching the internet market, AAA having their branch into the United States. You have that the power struggle is shifting, but for years they were able to get away with it because, you could fire me. unfortunately, one of the other side effects of WWE being, and the collapse in quality is the pay of indie wrestlers has plummeted too. So that guy that's making $50 a night wrestling in a gym in Central South, let's say South Orange in Jersey, he'd take a WWE contract today if you gave it to him. So sure, Zelina Vega wants to stand up on her morals and have the high suit. Fine, I'm going to replace you tomorrow with somebody I can pay less. So there comes to the point where it's like, look, keep your money and tough it out. Such as some talents have done, where they've finally gotten to the point where I've made enough money, I can quit and live comfortably, or you have no choice. That's kind of they kind of strong arm them. Plus, unfortunately, some of the wrestling was still that brotherhood that people were afraid to challenge the WWE because they would have been blacklisted elsewhere.
Danny, chime in on that one.
I was just going to say that, is it that they're just so big that they can't be beaten? Or, maybe like if somebody like a John Cena, somebody with, a little bit of money and maybe some political capital went against them, maybe like a Bruno did, maybe they can have a different result.
That's a real good point. Javier, Benny makes an interesting point. He mentions John Cena. I'm going to throw some other names into that mix. Dwayne Johnson.
Oh, yeah.
Steve Austin, Terry Bollea, people of that caliber, guys who are superiorly well-known, globally well-known. Not only are they well-known as wrestlers, but they're known as actors and television personalities and whatever else they do. Largely because of the push that they got from WWE television. And that's a big television network, by the way. So don't kid yourself. They're big. Here's the question I have. Will it take inevitably or eventually, choose whatever adjective you want, will it take someone of that caliber to come forward and speak on behalf of the current roster?
If you want pretty much immediate results, the big names like that have to get involved immediately. But behind the scenes, what you need is signatures. A lot of signatures, like 2/3,
right?
Some number like that, and then you can petition to be in this case SAG and the Screen Actors Guild, right?
Well, we will have. And one of the things Dan and I talked about privately, we are, after the first of the year, we are going to delimit the topic of wrestling because it's so bad these days. It really is bad. But we are going to increase our subject matter of wrestling journalism, because there's a lot to talk about in the written form. Certainly, there's more being written about wrestling than actual wrestling, and that's a scary thought, guys. It's true.
Everyone's got a book, right?
Yeah.
Tell me if I'm lying. Am I lying?
Not in the slightest.
No, I'm not. I'm not lying at all. But we are going to feature a lot more actors, actresses, newsmakers, pop culture icons, YouTube influencers, people like that. One of the people I spoke to yesterday, he called me. Surprise call, by the way. I got a phone call from Teddy Hart, a guy who has a reputation of, again, like some of the other people we mentioned, he plays by Teddy's rules. He plays by his own rules, and he's kind of like can call his own shots because of who he is. Now, unfortunately for Teddy, it's backfired. Now he kind of blacklisted himself. I should say that Teddy is on probation. He's doing really well. He's got himself cleaned up and he's straightened out. He sounds really good. And I'm going to meet with him in January, and we're going to talk about him coming on the show.
Very good.
Perhaps in studio next to me. Perhaps via Skype, but he's going to be in my area. in January. But he's a guy that's very reminiscent of some of these old school guys.
Yeah, so I was gonna say he's one of the guys that I can say this guy's very old school. Whether you like him or not, this guy's one of those. You feel that there's some realism there,
And think about it. And Dan and I can tell you, because we interviewed Brian Pillman, Brian Jr., of course. Teddy is part of that crew. Davey Boy Smith, British Bulldog Jr.
Yeah.
You got to remember something. These street kids are tight. I call them kids or young men. But, when you get to me and Benny's age, everybody's a kid.
Absolutely.
But here's the, right, Ben?
Oh, yeah.
But here's the thing, though, Benny. A guy like Teddy Hart and Bulldog Jr. and Brian Jr., they're old school by nature, by infusion, by upbringing. It's a different kind of work ethic.
Yeah.
It just amazed Dan and I how Brian Pillman Jr. could flip-flop in and out of kayfabe like it was. You're laughing, Dan. Tell them what I'm talking about.
No, you're absolutely right. The moment that jumps out to me the most, you had asked him about his appearance in the Battle Royal on Dark, and he was talking about being backstage, talking to the producers, here's how we're going to go, and they tell me when I'm going out, and then he's like, I walked through that curtain and I saw the competition and I knew I had to do my, and then next thing you know, he's in character describing it like it's a real fight, having just told us the story that he was backstage booking it.
Guys, it was brilliant.
Oh, it was amazing.
When you hear someone like that, that's refreshing. It's refreshing.
Yeah. It was absolutely brilliant. I got to see Brian wrestle. How I met him was he came here to New Jersey, and I got to hang out with him backstage a bit because the promoter's a good friend of mine, and I do a lot of work for him, and I plug him incessantly on the show. But Brian's a really good kid. He's really grounded, and he's a hell of a worker, and he wrestles a lot like his dad. And it's like you watching him work. I'm going to tell you something, man. It's scary. This kid is like scary good. He's like his father. And you never want to compare him to his father, but, how can you not? Because he looks just like him. I mean, looks like his dad.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
On that note, Angelo, I just wanted to add something. I'm actually in El Salvador. And I get to speak with some of the old school wrestlers down here, and they don't let kayfabe go that easily. When I speak with them and interview them, they're showing me pictures, they're all bloody, and they're talking about things, but they're talking about things semi kayfabe, but they don't let you in completely. They're like a lot of things they keep close to their chest, man.
And you know this better than I do. Mexico.
Yeah.
You will not break kayfabe in Mexico.
They
take that
it's
shit serious, man. Yeah. Those lucha guys, they will take you in the back alley and hurt your ass.
I mean,
they protect kayfabe.
Look at the old clips of Mil Mascaras doing the news interviews in a suit with his mask on.
Well, he would supposedly kayfabe the guys he'd be taking a shower with his mask on.
Yeah.
And then he would put a clean one on after he took his shower. He's kayfabing the boys in the shower.
I wonder if his driver's license had a mask on.
Yeah, go ahead, Benny.
No, I said I wonder if his driver's license he had a mask on.
Well, wait a minute. I'll tell you who did. And Javier will know exactly who I'm talking about. His name was the Great El Santo.
El Santo, yeah.
El Santo. This guy was the biggest star in Mexico, in South America, period. El Santo. He was a movie star wrestler before there were movie star wrestlers.
It was between him and Blue Demon. And El Santo.
And he did every movie with a mask on. Every movie.
Yeah.
Another guy we heard, Dan and I had Ron Fuller on the show.
Oh, yeah.
Ron joined us on camera. Talked about Johnny Walker.
Mr. Wrestling 2.
Mr. Wrestling 2 used to shower with his mask on.
Unreal.
Dan, tell me if I'm, please.
No, you're right. He had that story.
Mr. Wrestling, even in really recent interviews, he was almost, I would say, 70% kayfabe in what they were asking him without his mask, but he was pretty much in character still. You know, was great.
Yeah, and you know what's a shame, because Mr. Wrestling too, Johnny Walker was a guy, man, he could have been so much bigger. We talked about on the show when Ron Fuller was here. He could have been a lot bigger than he was, but apparently Johnny was his own worst enemy, is how it was told to Dan and I. You know, is that the gist you got, Dan? That kind of Johnny Walker was his own worst enemy?
I can't argue with that. He was he kind of set himself down the wrong path with some of the choices he made.
Yeah, bad choices, I think, is a great way to describe it. Benny, let me ask you a question. You've written some articles for Pro Wrestling Stories. Is there an article or a story that you wanted to write, but for whatever reason, either your conscience or fear of repercussions, that you did not write, something that you really felt strongly about?
I can't really say I've gotten to that point yet. I mean, I've only written a couple. There's so many more that I want to do, but I honestly couldn't give a good answer to that because I'm not really at that point yet.
Okay, fair enough. Javier, let me throw that same question to you. Is there like one particular story either, and I'm sure you may have one or two. Go ahead.
I only gave up on one story.
Okay.
For the meantime, it was his name is James Buffalo Bill Barrier. He was a promoter in Las Vegas.
I know who you're talking about. Yeah, go ahead. Tell the story.
And his gym, his school, his auto repair shop was right next to a strip club owned by alleged mafiosos.
That's not alleged. It's real. Yeah.
And there is so much information out there, just legalities, and the mob was in there real deep and real ugly. And you know, spoilers ahead, James Barrier wound up dying, and supposedly it was an accident, but everything's really strange there.
Well, I can tell you there's a lot more to that people don't know. I can also tell you that that Jimmy Boy, as they called him, was up to his 2 eye in loans and gambling debt and other nefarious activity. So he was not an innocent at all.
Gotcha.
And he was a big boy who knew who he was dealing with. You know, look, it's like how did they used to say it?
It's almost like you got to pick your battles.
That line, how was it? Don't do the crime if you can't do the time. You know what I'm saying? Along those lines, you know, he knew the point I'm trying to make is he knew who he was involved with.
Of course, yeah.
You know, and he had to know that if he crossed the wrong guy, you know, it only takes one guy to piss off.
Yeah, at some point, you gotta be like, you know what, I'm not gonna get involved with this because I got a family. I think it was 2 daughters.
Mm-hmm.
You know.
Well, I tell you, you know, it's
bad.
Yeah, it's a shame, but you know, Dan and I have done a couple of shows, like 4 shows already on the Mafia. We're not advocating for it, by the way, folks. So just so you know. We're just telling the story of stories that have already been out there. Books that are being written, have been written, and are being written. The difference between what we do and what other people do, however, is I think Dan and I offer a pretty good balance of the pros and cons.
Yeah.
You know? I think we give a balanced view of all the participants involved, the good, you know, to steal a movie title, Dan, the good, the bad, and the ugly. You know?
Right. Yep.
Yeah. On that note, we are coming to the end of our show, and I wanted to save this announcement for last. I am offering Big Ben SCALA from Ocala and Dan the Man the opportunity to continue this segment. And I'm going to tell you why. I am bowing out from the wrestling conversations. I am going to concentrate exclusively only on non-wrestling issues. And that will mean pop culture, news, entertainment, that sort of stuff. I'm really in more authors. I'm bringing a lot more authors on. I'm bringing some pretty heavy people on, like presidential level heavy. Anthony Scaramucci will be a guest on the show. In case you don't know who he is, just Google Scaramucci and Trump. He worked for Donald Trump for a while. But we're going to do a lot of stuff. And so I would like to offer Benny SCALA to welcome you back into the fold and say, if you want it, it's yours, kid.
To do what? Just do more of the wrestling stuff?
Yeah, you and Dan take over the wrestling stuff.
Yeah, sure.
You up for it, Dan? You and Ben?
That was quick, Benny.
I mean, well, I'm always down to talk wrestling.
All right. I'll walk you through it. I'll make sure that you're okay. I'll make sure you don't get too heavy in the weeds. I'll give you your knowledge. I'll smarten you up.
Yeah, I mean, just keep in mind, I am an enhancement talent. I'm
trying to give you a push here, brother. I'm trying to give you a push. You're an enhancement talent. You're a ham and egger. Yeah. I'm trying to make you a main eventer.
Angelo, you know your stuff, but Dan knows his stuff, man. I mean, Angelo's Angelo, but Dan, you can go toe to toe with pretty much anyone with wrestling knowledge. I'll tell you that.
Only one person he can't, and he knows it.
That's what I was trying to get to.
And Benny SCALA may have one up on him too. Yeah. You know what it is, though, Javier, and it's a simple answer. We're old. Mm-hmm. Age. The best experience in the world comes with age.
Well, it's a good perspective between you and Dan. It's a good perspective you guys have on the show.
And I'll tell you something, and in fairness, and this is kudos to you, because I've learned. I always looked at these shows are, as much as they are giving information to the audience, I also get information from these, because Dan will fill me in on a unique perspective that he has that I may not have thought of. Or I may be looking at through an older set of eyes where, he'll take the same subject matter and kind of tweak it into the 21st century. Yeah. So an old fart like me can understand it.
Yeah.
Because I'm pretty, meat and potatoes,
Yeah.
I'm a nuts and bolts kind of guy. Like this, Benny and I are like cut from the same cloth. We're just two old Italian guys from New York,
But there needs to be shows like that. The show's an important show, and it needs to continue, whether it's not wrestling or other topics. It needs to continue. Yeah. I would encourage.
I'd like to offer Benny the opportunity to be a recurring guest on the show from time to time if you want to do it.
Yeah, you said something before, Angelo, that like there really is nobody besides us who is, talking about, the 70s and, the old school wrestlers and stuff like that. Yeah. And then you go on Facebook, and I think I'm probably a member of about 100 wrestling pages. Yeah. Somebody will say, the Mount Rushmore of WWE, and they'll put like, Coco Beware at number 6. And I'll put like, do you guys ever hear Bruno Sammartino? And I'll get lambasted by some, 22-year-old kid who, because they don't have that historical perspective. And
as you're speaking, Benny, honest to God, this is breaking now. As you're speaking, Eddie Mansfield just texted me. Congratulations on 5 million downloads.
Yeah.
Wow.
I kid you not. I'm reading it right now. Let me tell you who we've had on the show here. This has been amazing. We've had J.J. McGuire, J.J. Dillon. We've had Sal Correnti, David Yohannan, the Metal Maniac, Karen McDaniel, Barbara Goodish, Baby Doll, Magnum T.A., Brian Pillman Jr., Cowboy Johnny Mantell, Cowboy John Scott Casey, Nikita Brezhnikov, Tony Villano, Jason Knight, Doc Diamond, Danny Cage, Evan Ginsberg, Lanny Poffo, Bill Pierce, Jimmy Valiant, Bill Dundee, Andrew Anderson, Sam Houston, Bill Apter, Phil LaRusso, Mike Williams, Vince Russo, 3 times, Joyce Grable, Casey Carlisle, Kathy Fitzpatrick, Jack Victory, Judy Martin, Katie Lee, John Arezzi, Princess Victoria, Ann Casey, the Kenny Casanova, Steve McCoy, Eric Dawson, Mike Williams, Dominic DiNucci. Upcoming guests include Stephan Bonner for his 2nd appearance, Stephen Plim for his 5th appearance, George Anastasia coming back, the Hacksaw Butch Reed, Kevin Sullivan, of course, coming back.
Wow.
Randy Hogan, Nick Christopher, Eddie Mansfield, and who am I missing? And Pete Wilcox, who was back in the 70s and 80s known as America's TV Elvis. He was on Murphy Brown, Charles in Charge, Happy Days, The Sandy Duncan Show. And these are names, unless you're 60 or older, you don't know what the hell I'm talking about. But probably me and Benny may be the only 2 guys here who know what I'm talking about. So anyway.
You didn't mention Gremlina, Angelo.
Oh, I forgot Grimmy. Yes, absolutely. Oh my God. Yeah, Grimmy's been, how many times has she been here? Do I remember? Oh my God. 4 times, 5 times? Javier, you probably know better than I do. 4?
Most of the lady wrestler shows she's been on, most of them.
Yeah, you know what? You're right. Dan, was it like 4 times now?
4 or 5 easy.
I love the one with.
I think her appearance on the Jeff Memorial Show should count as 2, though.
Yeah. That's kind of an inside joke, but yeah. Oh my God, yeah, for sure.
The fact I just want to let you know, Angelo, the fact that you've gotten all those guests, it's amazing, and props to you and Dan being there you've been there ever since Jeff the Ref was gone. You took his spot, right, Dan?
Correct. Yes.
It's always going to be Jeff's spot, but you have to fill in.
Oh yeah,
right.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah.
But those
that's
guests.
The thing, Javier, and I thank you for bringing Jeff up, because that's the thing. It's really important. I made a promise that Jeff would always be represented in this show, and he is in every show. He's never far from my thoughts. You know, he's such a young guy, young guy when he passed. He had a lot of medical problems, but still, he's young, 42 years old.
That's my age.
But yeah, I mean, you think about that. Just his life is just getting started, and that man. I'm gonna tell you something, brother. He knew more about wrestling off the top of his head than most people if they had the thesaurus in front of them, or a full volume of Encyclopedia Britannicas of wrestling. It would be like, one Jeff the Ref is like having like 5 Bill Apters at your disposal.
Oh no, yeah, definitely.
And there's another guy who's been here too, Uncle Bill Apter. Love Bill. But yeah, so we are we're going to continue to do our wrestling with the future shows, but we're going to do a lot less wrestling in that regard, more wrestling journalism, because quite frankly, folks, the problem is that there's not a product that you can really enjoy. I can't watch, and Dan, I've said this before many times, I can't watch but maybe 10 minutes of it.
It's hard.
I literally, as of this date today, as of December 3rd, I have literally not watched wrestling in almost 2 years.
Yeah, same.
It's one of those things where you just don't care about the performers. You don't. I call them performers. If we're talking about WWE, you just don't care about them.
Well, and that's what they are. They are performers. They're actors. What's that, Benny?
This is what one of the questions that I was going to ask Javier, and it says, do you think us older guys are relegated to watching old school wrestling on YouTube for the rest of our lives? I mean, is there ever going to be another product that we can live with?
Well, I started watching wrestling in late '85, early '86, so I consider myself a pretty newcomer. But for me, I'm 42 years old. 90% of my wrestling watching is on YouTube.
Yeah,
and I think for you guys who are definitely were there for the 70s and all that and late 60s, like Angelo's mentioned, I think it's going to be harder and harder to watch. In this case, Raw and SmackDown. Maybe not other companies. Maybe, but Raw and SmackDown. That's it's going to be impossible from now on.
It's awful. Oh my God, it's awful.
I go to let's say I go to a restaurant or a sports bar, and I sometimes tell them to put it on. But what do I get? There's a guy in the middle of the ring talking for like 20 minutes. And then everyone else is there is like, take this crap off. I mean,
I can't stand that.
Take this off. They're not even wrestling. They're not even doing anything.
Let me tell you how dramatically wrestling has evolved. And in the words of Princess Victoria, who said it best, how wrestling has devolved. There used to be a 1-hour show every week with anywhere from 8 to 10 matches. Think about this.
Hi, Angelo. I gotta go check something out. Are we recording this, or this is extra?
No, this is all. We're on the air, brother.
I'm sorry.
You need to spit. You need to.
Yeah, I got a split, Angelo. I apologize. I gotta go check something out.
We will. We'll say good night, Javier. You are welcome back. Please take me up on my invite.
Thank you very much. You let me know. Maybe I guess Dan is taking over the wrestling. You said, or
I'll make sure Dan coordinates with you. Absolutely.
And I apologize. I just gotta go do something right now.
Javier, thank you very much.
Yeah, it was a pleasure to meet you.
Thank you, Benny. Nice to meet you, Dan. Yeah. Angelo, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Good night, Javier.
Thank you, man.
Great guest.
Yeah,
from El Salvador. That's where he was in El Salvador tonight. Yeah, but the point I was making to Javier is, Benny, that was a really, really good question. I mean, are we relegated to watching, YouTube? I hope so, because it's better than what's on television.
I'll watch hours of Memphis, Old South, Championship Wrestling from Florida. I mean, you name it.
I'll watch that stuff all day long.
Yeah, absolutely.
Absolutely. Dan, how about you, brother?
Yeah,
are you enjoying today's product?
Well, I mean, AEW is about to get a lot better now that they signed 61-year-old Sting to a full-time contract. But
to do what?
I assume he'll take the same role. I assume he'll take the same role that Arn Anderson and Tully Blanchard have. He'll be the manager / he can still show up with the bat and point it at somebody. But no, to answer your question, I think it's telling not just us, but the WWE Network. When they publish their numbers, an overwhelming majority of their streams are products prior to 1985. People are watching the Mid-South tapes. People are watching the AWA tapes. They're watching the old school WWE or WWF.
And therein lies the success of WWE. It's not their product. It's their archive.
Yeah.
That's where their success lies. The company was built on Pedro, Bruno, Superstar Graham, Buddy Rogers, Eduardo Carpante, Dominic DiNucci, Bull Ramos, Flying Fred Curry, guys like this, you know, people of that caliber.
Yep.
That's who built that company. Thank goodness somebody had the foresight to record all of that stuff.
Yeah, absolutely.
And keep it and not bicycle over it.
Yeah.
Do you know how many great matches are lost to history because they would literally take the videotape and record over it and send it around the loop?
I think they did that with a lot of the old Capitol wrestling from Washington, D.C., because you see very little of that on TV.
Yeah. You know why? There's two reasons why. They bicycled over it, number one. Number two, the television station they were using in Baltimore, which they called it from Washington, D.C., but really, Benny, it was Baltimore.
Okay.
Yeah, but it's the same difference because you're right there. The television station in Baltimore still owns those old, what's left of them, the old Capitol tapes. Unfortunately, nobody will ever see, they'll never see the light of day. Nobody will ever see them because they're going to be held up in litigation from now till doomsday.
Right.
Vince McMahon doesn't own them because he doesn't own Capitol Wrestling.
Right.
There is another company called Capitol Wrestling, who, for all intents and purposes, if they chose to, can claim ownership of those old tapes.
Yeah.
Because it's their name.
And you see that with, I mean, and I give him credit where credit's due, his vision, when McMahon was buying up some of the territories, he was buying the archives. He wasn't buying the talent or the streaming right, streaming rights.
Dan,
he was buying the TV time slots, right, and he was buying the tapes.
And Dan, that's what a lot of people don't know. They said, well, Vince McMahon went in and, he bought everybody out. No, he didn't. Let me tell you what happened. And Dan, I'm not the biggest Vince fan.
Right.
But here's what happened, Benny. Vince walked in, as he did on all these places, San Francisco or Minneapolis or Texas, where he walked in all these places with a suitcase full of cash, like he did everywhere. And he offered them the opportunity to buy in. I will pay you X amount of dollars for your promotion. You come and work for me. They all said no. They let their ego get in the way. So he said, okay, well, if you're not going to work for me, then I'm just going to buy you. He literally did a Don Corleone on them. He made them all an offer they couldn't refuse.
Yep.
And Vern Gagne, who was the last holdout, who said no at every amount he threw at them, Vince finally said, you know what? I won't deal with you. I'll deal with your television network.
Right.
And he made the station owner an offer he couldn't refuse. So the guy that Vern Gagne has been doing business with for 30 years on a dime said, goodbye.
Yep.
Bye-bye, baby.
Well,
that's how he got.
Vince offered to pay him so much money every week to put Vince's show on the air, correct?
Exactly. That's how he got
$3,000 a week, Benny.
Yep, that's how he got Georgia and Deep South too.
Yep.
He bought the time slots, and without the television, they were gone within, short time.
Well, without TV, that's what happened to Eric Bischoff.
Yeah.
Well,
because Eric Bischoff he was going to buy WCW, but Turner told him they weren't going to air wrestling anymore, and his investors weren't going to back a wrestling company that didn't have a time slot.
Yeah. Well, how do you buy a wrestling company with no TV?
Exactly.
Where do you go? So you own a wrestling company. Okay, so now you have a network that's tried and true that had been broadcasting wrestling for 30, 40 years up to that point.
Yep.
Okay. Now, all of a sudden, they want nothing. I mean, nothing to do with wrestling. So you got this company and no television. How do you sell that to another station?
Yeah.
How do you go to another network, Benny, and say, well, we got this great product, but we don't have a way to broadcast it. Let's make a deal. Well, they're not going to make a deal with you. How are they going to put money up for something they don't know about?
Right.
Right.
Okay. Because the chances are, unless you follow wrestling, you don't know what this stuff is. That was the whole issue with Time Warner. None of those guys watched wrestling.
Yeah.
And they didn't care to watch it. They didn't want to watch it. They didn't want it on their network.
Right.
It's not the first thing that went. When Time Warner took over Turner, boom.
Right.
WCW was out.
Right.
Gone.
Yep.
And the rest, as they say, is history.
It's history, yeah.
Exactly.
Well, what's going on with Benny Scala from Ocala, the technically Newport Richie?
Yeah. I was going to say that the women call me Big Ben, those with thick glasses who really can't see. But
there you go.
So I start a new job on Monday, and so I'll be working from home. So that's why I said I will have a lot more time. I've been driving at the St. Pete.
How has the clearly the pandemic corona has affected you now? So you're working from home.
Well, no, I will be starting on Monday.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I've been driving to St. Pete every day, which is
okay, gotcha.
About an hour drive each way. So I'm very happy to be staying at home.
Yeah, saving a ton of money on gas, right?
Oh yeah.
Right.
Yeah, an hour. Holy shit. Yeah, well, Benny, when I first met Benny, said he would listen to our show on the drive.
Oh yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
And yeah, the first guest I listened to was Jimmy Valiant, and then you had a run-in with Davey O'Hannon, and I'm thinking like, man, these guys really love each other, and just listening to them is what hooked me on the show.
Yeah. Oh, well, we love your Boogie's a trip. Well, you know, you got to talk to him.
Yep.
Yeah.
I read his book too.
Yeah. Great book.
Yep.
Great book. Love that book.
I think you're in there somewhere, Angelo.
I am. I'm on page 564.
Oh, yep.
Yep. Dan, stop laughing. So what's the deal now? How do people get a hold of Ben Scala on your social media? Plug away any of the
I'm pretty simple. It's Benny Scala. I think I'm friends with just about everybody in the wrestling business because I can't get enough of it. You know, wrestling is like crack, right? You know. And in fact, really, I was going to say to Javier when I saw, I looked in on Pro Wrestling Stories. He's got so many different stories about so many different people.
Oh my, yeah.
He's got Davey O'Hannon. He's got Larry and Bruno. He's got something with Ric Flair and Jack Veneno about the title change that was never recognized.
Yeah.
Just like fascinating stuff.
Oh yeah. Oh, that title change, boy, that's a story and a half if you never heard it.
You could do an entire show just on what led up to that.
Oh man, you have no idea, brother. Oh, I know the ins and outs of that one. You got to remember something. I have had my nose to the grindstone on this for a long time.
Oh, yeah.
Long time. And I know all the players, all of them. And most of them have been on the show too. A lot of them have. So you're on Facebook, just to look up Benny Scala then.
Just Benny Scala. Yeah.
There you go.
Or Benny PFG.
What's going on in the world of Dan the Man Sebastiano? How do people get a hold of you, and how do they find us and all that stuff?
Well, I'm on Twitter, _WWTF. Wrestling with the Future. We're on Twitter at Wrestling Future. That's no G, at Wrestling Future. We're on YouTube, Facebook, Wrestling with the Future Podcast. We're on Instagram, Wrestling with the Future Podcast, and we can be found anywhere podcasts are listened to, as well as numerous radio and international networks as well. We continue to grow. Angelo mentioned earlier, 5 million. That's a hell of a hit. So,
brother, we are
everywhere now. How many different platforms?
We're everywhere.
Yeah.
We are on radio. We're on TV in Europe. We're in Canada, on television in Canada. They stream our show. It's just nuts. It really is. It's crazy. Benny, you don't know about this, but we're gonna do a commercial here, And then I'm going to tell everybody about our new sponsor coming on board.
All right.
Dan?
Okay, well,
Hit it.
we do have a new, like Angelo said, we have a new sponsor coming up, but this show is sponsored by our friends at Manscaped.com. Manscaped.com is the leading supplier and producer of man trimming products. Their current package is Lawnmower 3.0. It includes a deodorizing spray, or excuse me, a refreshing spray, a deodorant, comes in a leather carry bag, a very nice leather carry bag. You can use promo code WrestlingFuture for 20% off your purchase. They're pushing the Weed Whacker now. It's a nose and ear trimmer. Like I mentioned last show, as an Italian, I'm pretty much required by law to have one of those. But I love their products. Manscaped.com. They are great stuff. They've been friends of the show pretty much since the beginning. So Manscaped.com, promo code WrestlingFuture. That is Manscaped.com. Your balls will thank you.
Well, thank you. Beautiful. And so will we. Benny, you're going to love this, brother. Our new sponsor coming on board is Blue Chew.
Nice.
So you can shave them and get them to stand the
If there's one market that Wrestling with the Future can corner, it's boners and shaved balls, and that's for damn sure.
Absolutely.
Some pretty stiff competition, right?
Oh, I love it. Oh, you know what, Benny? You just gave me the tagline for our new spot.
There you go.
Oh, shit. On that twisted and sorted note.
We're all going to be hard at work, right?
Oh, for God. He's going to be doing this for the next 15
minutes.
Oh, man. For Benny Scala, for Dan the Man, I'm Angelo DiCipio. Until next time, we continue to wrestle with the future. Take care, everybody. Be good to everyone. Be good to yourselves. Be good to your neighbors. And we'll see you. Happy wrestling. Take care. Bye-bye.
Adios.